How you doing out there, fellow Cannabisians? Have you ever wondered why cannabis was ever federally illegal in the first place? Whether it's conspiracy, racial, propaganda, or for political reasons, cannabis has been federally illegal for 59 plus years. Just to set the record straight, America and cannabis have a deep history. In colonial days, farmers were encouraged, if not mandated, to grow hemp. Advocates like Thomas Jefferson to George Washington cultivated cannabis and saw its potential as a cash crop. Universally, cannabis is known for its medical properties and was listed in the U.S. Pharmacopoeia from 1850 to 1937. In the early 1900s, social attitudes started to change. From the start of the Mexican Revolution in 1910, droves of Mexican immigrants came into the U.S., crossing into places like Texas and Louisiana. Mexicans referred to the cannabis plant as marijuana. America was more used to its counter name as cannabis, since it had been in basically every medical extract at the time. Then racial ideas started to spread about immigrants and cannabis. The term marijuana is a derogatory term, and it kind of stems from this era. Cannabis wasn't classified as a narcotic in the Harrison Narcotics Act of 1914, but that soon changed. By the 1930s, drug warriors, most notably Harry Anslinger, became a very powerful anti-marijuana force. This played on through its propaganda, reefer madness, and conspiracy to raise public fear. Anslinger also proclaimed smoking cannabis would result in white women having sex with black men, also claiming marijuana make men of color to become more violent and solicit sex from white women. So the jazz music scene was also heavily targeted. The Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 made the possession or transfer of marijuana illegal throughout the U.S., excluding medical and industrial uses through imposition of an excise tax on all hemp sales. After the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, a series of aggressive laws continued to target cannabis. The Boggs Act of 1951 and the Narcotics Control Act ramped up the penalties associated with cannabis. By the Nixon years of the 1970s, cannabis status as a controlled, prohibited substance was set in stone. Even with much protest, the Schaefer Commission declaring cannabis shouldn't be scheduled as an illicit drug. Hemp, grouped with its cousin cannabis, was effectively prohibited. Caught in the crosshairs of the drug wars of the 1970s and 1990s, with consecutive administration failing to distinguish between the two, hemp cultivation was virtually non-existent until the early 2000s. In 1996, California became the first state to approve the use of cannabis for medical purposes, ending its 59-year reign as an illicit substance with no medical value. Prior to 1937, cannabis had a 5,000-year history. William Randolph Hearst, Citizen Kane, and Hearst Paper Division of Kimberly-Clark owned a vast acreage of timberlands. The Hearst Company supplied most paper products. He stood to lose billions if hemp remained legal. In 1937, DuPont patented a process to make plastics from coal and oil. DuPont's annual report urged stockholders to invest in its new synthetic petrochemical division. Natural hemp industrialization would have ruined over 80% of DuPont's business. Andrew Mellon became Hoover's Secretary of Treasury and DuPont's primary investor. He appointed his future nephew-in-law, Harry Anslinger, to the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Anslinger hated Mexicans and wanted to vilify the cannabis they so loved. He lied to the public and made it extremely restricted over his 30-year tenure. Nixon is responsible for making cannabis a narcotic in the 1970s, blaming blacks for heroin and anti-war hippies for cannabis. He also lied for political gain. Upon this research, it was some very interesting questions and conclusions I came up with. I hope this inspired you to do your own research. I find these conspiracies about what kept cannabis illegal for so long very interesting. I hope I entertained you. You enjoy yourself, fellow Cannabisians. I know I did.